joined us. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber's regular Friday webinar session. My name's Colm Shannon. I'm Chief Executive of the Chamber, if you don't know me. And today I'm delighted to say I'm being joined by Gerry Quinn from Legacy Coaching. Gerry is an executive coach and business mentor with decades of experience working in the corporate leadership and wealth management sector. Today he's going to talk about emotional intelligence in leadership. We all want to be good leaders. Understanding the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership is an important part of being a good leader. We've only got an hour, so this is just a taster session. It will give you an insight into how emotional intelligence can help you as a leader and help your business. If you'd like to engage further with Gerry, we'll be sending out the slides and Gerry's contact details after today's session. So, okay, let's get started. And the way we'll work this is Gerry will take us through his presentation, and then at the end of that, we will have time for questions. If anything occurs to you as the session's going on, just pop your question into the chat box and we will pick it up at the end when we get to question time. So once again, if everyone could ensure that their mics are muted, we will get started. So Gerry, if I could pass over to you, and what I'll do is let you share the screen. So if you could maybe bring up your presentation.
Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, I can see it. Jessica, could you confirm you can see it?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, thanks, Colm, and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Emotional Intelligence in Leadership. Just before I get underway, I want to say that if you see in the slides or any slides or anything I may say, like with abbreviations EQ, that means emotional intelligence. IQ, as I'm sure everybody knows, is academic intelligence, but I'll try to not use abbreviations myself, but you may see them in slides and wonder what they are. So what are we going to deal with today? So we're going to look at what is emotional intelligence and look at the emotional intelligence model and how it can influence leadership performance. I'll also look at 3 leadership qualities and give some practical ideas that will help with effective leadership. I'll then go on to look at some leadership styles and how an emotionally intelligent leader would use those styles, and finish off with looking at what we need to be getting ready for in the future in terms of leadership. But before I get really into it, I want to say a couple of things about leadership. Leadership is always topical. It's a great discussion subject. But in 2020 and currently, the spotlight has been on this subject with greater intensity. From the political world to industry to local communities, people are and have been looking for leadership to give them hope, clarity, to inform, and to guide us through and out of the world that we've been experiencing this last 12 to 16 months. But I have to say that being a leader is a hugely difficult role. Whether you're the head of the organization or leading a team, you can be dealing with people with different personalities, different nationalities, different cultures, different drivers, different values, different attitudes, and different skill levels. And your job as a leader, regardless of the makeup of your team, is to deliver results for the organization. Of course, you want to do that. Of course, you want that to be the case for the longer term. And you want that in a way where your role can be enjoyed, your team can enjoy their roles, and both parties can develop in work and life, see progression, and to feel fulfilled. So I'm sure you'd agree after saying that, you would realize that being a leader is not very, very easy at all. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is emotional intelligence and how it is key to modern day leaders delivering success. But what is emotional intelligence? It involves 2 parts. First, becoming aware of how emotions in ourselves and others drive behaviours. And second, developing the skills to manage these emotions intelligently, to leverage our personal strengths to create products, solve problems, and effectively influence the performance of others. That's an official definition. But simply put, emotional intelligence describes a new way of being smart that is at least equally important to achieving success as IQ is, or technical expertise is. If you're pursuing a new career, or it is said that people pursuing a new career, that IQ may get you in the door, but EQ, emotional intelligence, will decide how far you go. And that sentiment is one that Stephen Covey, the famous author of many business-focused books, agrees with. And in this quote, he says, "Research shows convincingly that EQ, emotional intelligence, is more important than IQ in almost every role, and many times more important in leadership roles." This finding is accentuated as we move from the control philosophy of the industrial age to an empowering release philosophy of the knowledge worker age. Really what Stephen is saying here is, as leadership has developed over the years, the importance of emotional intelligence has increased quite dramatically. Now, this is the emotional intelligence model, which was developed with specific focus on identifying those competencies that characterize effective leaders. And there are 5 key components. As you can see, social awareness, self-awareness, social skills, self-management, and adaptability. In those 5 key components, to those we add 10 specific emotional intelligence competencies, so that your model now looks like this. In the social awareness sector, we have empathy. In the self-awareness sector, we have self-knowing and straightforwardness. In the social skills area, we have relationship skills. The self-management, we have self-control, self-confidence, and self-reliance. And under adaptability, we have self-actualization and optimism. And those are the 5 key components with the additional 10 competencies that will identify one's skills in emotional intelligence and are deemed to be effective in determining one's leadership qualities and one's leadership strengths. But I just want to take you through each area in a little bit more detail so that you have an idea of how they may impact in terms of leadership and in business in general. If we take social awareness first, it's your talent for tuning into the experience of others. This area includes empathy, the capacity to be aware of, understand, and appreciate the feelings and thoughts of others. Of course, to understand how other people feel, it helps if you're able to recognize and understand your own emotional experience first. These skills enable you to grasp the emotional dimensions of a business situation and enhance your capacity to influence others to achieve productive outcomes. Self-awareness, your capacity to understand your own emotions and stay in touch with your feelings. It includes self-knowing, the ability to recognize how your feelings and emotions impact upon your personal opinions, attitudes, and judgments. Straightforwardness, the ability to communicate your feelings, thoughts, and beliefs openly in a straightforward way. And this cluster of competencies enables you to develop your leadership presence and communicate authentically and openly. Social skills. Your people skills define your talent for interacting and getting along with others. The primary ability in this area involves relationship skills, the knack for establishing collaborative and mutually rewarding relationships. This competency, along with empathy, is essential for building the value of the relationship assets in the business. Self-management. your ability to manage your own emotions, and have confidence in your ability to manage your personal performance. It includes self-control, the capacity to control your emotions well and restrain your actions until you have time to think rationally. Self-confidence, the ability to accept and respect yourself and essentially like the person you are. And self-reliance, the power to be independent in planning and making important decisions, and the ability to take responsibility for yourself. Adaptability, your ability to respond to challenges and adapt to new and difficult situations. It involves your ability to react well to change and to adjust your emotions, thoughts, and behavior to changing situations and to be receptive to new ideas. Self-actualization, which is the source of your emotional energy, enables you to maintain commitment to long-term goals. Optimism, your capacity to sense opportunities, and genuine optimism determines your level of resilience and your ability to bounce back from setbacks. And these cluster of skills enable you to take on new challenges and respond creatively and effectively to new opportunities. Extensive research was conducted across a number of countries involving successful business and community leaders. And in the business leaders, the survey and research was conducted across a range of industries. The results of the research showed that the qualities that set successful leaders apart from the average were the 10 competencies in this model. So high-performing leaders will possess these competencies with scores much higher than the average leader. And there are other benefits as well. The overall result of well-developed emotional intelligence is healthy emotional and social functioning, which is linked to your well-being. All the components work together to produce an effective level of emotional and social functioning and well-being. Understanding yourself allows you to better express yourself. This leads to healthier interactions with others, which then leads to making good decisions. Making good decisions allows you to manage your stress better, which leads to understanding your emotions better, and so on. It is important to consider that the model is dynamic and each component relies on and influences the other. No one is more important than the other. The model is circular in nature. There is no start or end point. Effective leadership comes from building your levels in all of these competencies and components. As you build, naturally there will be areas that are stronger than others. Then you can decide to develop those areas that are weak over a period of time. There is no maximum score. Therefore, building emotional intelligence can be ongoing. Emotional intelligence is a journey, not a destination. But do I hear some of you say, but where do I start? How do I know where I am? Well, through the completion of a straightforward questionnaire, which might take about 15 minutes or so, a report can be produced to show where you sit against the competencies in the above model. This is the starting point. Then through teaching and/or coaching, your development can take place to develop your overall levels of emotional intelligence. The report I speak of is called the Emotional Capital Report, and it is a detailed, personalized report. As a leader, if you want to win the hearts and minds of your people, inspire them to follow you, and at times convince them to do what they previously felt was impossible, then I feel the following 3 qualities are very, very important. Authenticity and trustworthiness, building strong relationships, and communication. I want to go through these 3 qualities one at a time. I will start with the authenticity and trustworthiness. If your people don't see you as genuine and trustworthy, it will limit your ability to build strong relationships. Your people will want you to be true to yourself and to show humility. Think of yourself less. Recognize that power comes from building trust and role modeling rather than talking yourself up. Find opportunities to recognize other people. As a leader, and particularly a new leader, don't succumb to the delusions of grandeur. Don't get carried away with your status. This is not what your people want to see. And they also don't expect their leader to be superhuman. So don't pretend you have all the answers. Great leaders are not afraid to be fallible. They channel their personal ambitions into their company and their people. Their satisfaction comes from the achievement of their team or organization rather than them personally. People can relate to a leader without liking them. A leader's priority should be to be respected rather than to be liked. This is achieved by their actions rather than their words. However, a big obstacle to authenticity is a strong need to maintain a certain image. If so, you may have defined your image of executive or leader more narrowly than perhaps you needed to. So try to let go of those tight limits or expectations of how you feel you need to appear. There's no need to act. Revealing your personality and humanness is a better sign of effective leadership. So I just want to leave this section with a couple of reflective questions. First of all does your actions always mirror your words? Do you ever admit that you don't have the answer? Now, building strong relationships. If you can build a strong and trusted relationship with your team or people, then that will largely determine future success for your company. If you want respect, it is important to show respect. Know what motivates your team or your key people. What drives them and why? What are their values? What are their individual strengths and weaknesses? Get to know about them personally. For example, their family, their interests, their hobbies. Know their birthdays if possible. Now, I appreciate if you're the leader of the organization, that might be a little bit difficult. However, in my view, my personal view, I think the minimum expectation I have here is that everyone should know that about their direct reports. This then allows you to have conversations with them other than work related. It shows the human side of the leader and cements the foundations for strong, trusted relationships. It is also important to retain the right distance with your team. Don't become too close, but be prepared to offer close support in times of personal crisis. It is important to be caring and compassionate, but you will not be perceived as such unless you show it. It is important to empathize and sense emotions, but not becoming one of the boys or girls. The leader is ultimately accountable for all actions and decisions, but being a strong leader doesn't necessitate being macho and making on-the-spot decisions. It is not a good idea, it is a good idea where possible to use colleagues as a sounding board for greater authenticity before arriving at decisions. But you must have your limits on the number you involve. Too much information or opinion can create doubt and uncertainty. Using colleagues as a sounding board is not a sign of weakness, and you will build trust and respect for letting them challenge your thinking and for sharing the process with them, even if your final decision does not incorporate all of their advice. And again, some reflective questions for you from terms of building strong relationships. How well do you know your team? Do you ever use colleagues as a sounding board? And how do you show respect? Next area is communication, which I believe to be a very strong and important area in terms of effective leadership. We communicate so often. We communicate every day, every week, every month, every year, in so many different ways. And I'm going to start this with a quote from George Bernard Shaw, which says, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." That's an interesting quote. I'll let it sit with you for a couple of seconds. You might want to read it again. And I'll give you my understanding of what he's saying. So we communicate a lot, whether verbally, sorry, let me start that again. We start the communication cycle a lot, whether verbally or in written form, but we have not communicated until we are understood. Lots of people say a lot, write a lot, but are not getting their messages across. They're not communicating. How many times have you been in a group meeting, and when it is finished, everyone goes away with a different message? Effective leadership and effective communication are intertwined. You need to be able to communicate in a variety of ways, and how you communicate with your people will shape their perception of you as their leader and your relationship with them. The quality and effectiveness of communication across your organization directly affects the success of your business strategy. Your team is vital to your achievement, but how confident are you that they know exactly what you expect of them? Do they know your values, what's important to you, and what you won't tolerate? If you have not communicated your goals, values, and vision in a way that allows them to be clearly understood, then the price you can pay is enormous. The most successful, creative, and productive teams are made up of members who are clear on why they do what they do in a company. They are also very clear on how their contribution affects and transfers into the overall success of the company. If your team members are uncertain about this, expect a lot of turnover in your team. When people are unclear of their contribution, it kills initiative, creativity, proactive actions, and it quickly leads to demotivation. Let me share with you a survey carried out by the Harvard Business School on building shareholder value. And they carried out this survey with a wide-ranging number of employees around that question of, do they understand what they do and the impact they can have on the organization they work for? And among those who didn't understand the part they play in the big picture and believed they had little impact on results, only 23% of them were motivated to achieve success. Whereas those who did understand their role and did understand the impact they could make in the overall results of the organization, 91% were motivated to achieve success. So a big difference in numbers, which would have a big difference on the results of any organization. So for me, that tells me people need to understand their role in the bigger picture. Excuse me. Effective leaders will symbolize what their company stands for and communicate with conviction and passion. They will encourage feedback about themselves and the company, both positive and negative. By encouraging feedback, the people feel more comfortable with the organization and the leader strengthens his or her bond with employees. Good leaders will encourage an open two-way exchange of information through different forms. Could it be company newsletters, through one-to-one meetings, or it could be some online feedback facility. Whatever it might be, it all works and is very important. And all of these ideas will give enormous confidence to employees and help develop pride in their organization. Every day, leaders communicate in some form or other, large audiences, small meetings, on the telephone, or in written format. It is vital to assess what form of communication will be the most effective for the message you want to put out there. So much thought is required. At times, you need to put yourself in the shoes of those receiving your message. It is also important for leaders to listen effectively, listen to understand. Doing this is not easy, but when perfected, allows you to gain a much better base of information, and it also has a huge impact upon the person you're listening to, as they will soon see and feel that you're listening deeply and understanding what they're saying to you. It also means they will feel much better about themselves. So when we're in this situation, listening to individuals or groups, we must be present, and we must show and demonstrate that we are listening. And I'm sure many of you will know, but an easy way to show and demonstrate you're listening is to feedback what you've just heard. For example, Peter, what I've just heard you say is X, Y, and Z. If that is right, Peter says, that's it, that's great. And he feels great that you've actually listened intently to him. If it's not right, he will correct you and put you back on track again. So this is all important in order to gain the confidence and increase the confidence levels of your employees. In today's world of the internet and the speed of communication, it is a rarity to get a handwritten note. And because of that, when given, it is much appreciated by the recipient. It may seem irrelevant to many how we communicate, but when you want to say thank you, congratulations, or get well, it is amazing the impact of a handwritten note or card. So I've covered quite a bit in the communication side there. So I just want to summarize the key points for you. First of all, I said we have not communicated until we are understood, to the quote by George Bernard Shaw. There are different forms of communication, and it is important to choose the right one that will have the greatest effect. Feedback is very important, giving and receiving both positive and negative. And listening to understand, being present for our people is vitally important, and it builds a sense of unity with your people and builds the credibility of trust of the leader. And do not underestimate the impact of handwritten notes or cards at appropriate times. Communications of goals, values, and vision is a way that allows them to be clearly understood is vital to the success of the leader and the organization. And again, some reflective questions for you. Do you believe you are always understood? What thought do you give to your methods of communication? Are you confident that your team understands their role and the difference they can make? Are you an effective listener? What can you do differently to listen more effectively? And how do you encourage feedback in your organization? Now I want to cover leadership styles. And I have here 6 leadership styles, which many of you may be familiar with in terms of having experienced them or just understanding them. And you may have seen the same leadership style with a different title, but I'll work through these and give you my understanding of them. Starting with autocratic. Autocratic style demands immediate compliance. It's a do as I say approach, which can be seen as bullying and very demanding. Unfortunately, I think it's a style of the past. Authoritative is a style which mobilizes people towards a vision. The leader is seen as confident and maps the way ahead and is known as a visionary. Affiliative is a leadership style that creates emotional bonds and harmony as a people come first approach and supports the emotional needs of a team. Democratic is a style that builds consensus through participation, seeks opinion before deciding, shares information, allows creativity and helps employee development, and engenders trust and team spirit. Pace setting expects excellence and and self-direction. A do as I do approach sets a high bar and is very driven. It's very effective at getting things done, but because of the drive within the leader, it can hurt people along the way because he has very high expectations. Coaching, develop people for the future approach, unlocking talent within organizations. Leaders who use this style open their hearts and doors to people. So I'm sure you've experienced those and are familiar with those styles. An emotionally intelligent leader will be able to use multiple styles of leadership, but can switch styles as needed in a very seamless way. They are sensitive to the impact they're having on others and adjust their style to get the best results. I've compared this to how a professional golfer plays a round of golf. He's got a bag of clubs, which are all very different and required for different shots that the golfer would face throughout a round of golf. As the golfer prepares for a shot, they will assess various things. The lie of the ball, is it on the fairway, light rough, heavy rough, in the bunker, whatever. They will look at the distance they are from the green or from the flag. They will assess weather conditions, is the wind in their favor, or are they against the breeze, and if there's any rain or whatever. But they'll go through all those sort of decision-making process. And then they'll take a club from their bag and they'll play the shot without us realizing the process that they've just gone through. High impact, emotionally intelligent leaders do the same by changing styles when required. They change styles seamlessly to get the right result or to make the maximum impact. As I touched upon at the beginning, today's business environments are fraught with challenges due to the changing demographics and the employee expectations of a diverse workforce. So therefore, this may call, or may already have called for, a new breed of leader who is a mix of most leadership styles, or as I have said, has the agility to change as required. So as the Chinese proverb goes, the wise adapt themselves to circumstances as water molds itself to the pitcher. An agile leadership style may be the ultimate leadership style required for leading today's talent. And an agile leader is a leader with high levels of emotional intelligence. 10 years ago, great leadership was all about being decisive and strong. 5 years ago, it was about being creative and innovative. Things have changed and continue to change. Great leadership today is about knowing how to engage and support team members and co-workers on a deeper, authentic level. When you think about the three attributes or leadership qualities that I have touched upon today, there's a common thread running through them. And when you see and understand the change that has taken place and continues to take place in terms of effective leadership styles and qualities, then emotional intelligence plays a huge part. This slide, for me, illustrates the change that has taken place in workplaces and in terms of required leadership. No longer is the board and the CEO the most important part. It is about creating an environment where the workforce can flourish, develop, and as a result, be productive so that everyone wins. In conversations I have had and in articles I read, it would appear that it's more and more common for new recruits, or should I say potential new recruits, to interview organizations more as opposed to the other way around. So for me, This shows that they are looking for a business to believe in and a business with real leadership. Emotional intelligence is the common thread through all of this. It is not just a new management fad. It's very real, and while we all need some, we don't all have it. Some people are lucky that it's in their DNA, and others have got to be taught it. And as I've said, emotional intelligence can be taught and coached, so whatever your current level, it can be improved upon. But do you know where you are or where the leaders in your organization are in terms of emotional intelligence? The change that has happened in the last 10 years will continue to happen as we move forward. And I was listening recently to an interesting podcast from a guy called Jacob Morgan, who is the author of a book called The Future Leader. And it was a book he just finished at the beginning of 2020. And the book was essentially looking at the qualities required for a future leader. And he was putting a time span on that. But in his podcast, he now stresses that the timeline he was using towards a future leader has now reduced significantly due to our experiences in 2020 and currently in 2021. So the pandemic basically could have accelerated the future leader by approximately 5 years. So are the leaders moving in time with all that has changed and continue to change? Are you and your leaders equipped for the leadership challenges of the next 5 to 10 years? Change is happening, as it always does, but much faster than we may have anticipated. Thank you very much, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Gerry. If just hit stop sharing screen there, and we could maybe just start to pick up some of the questions. Okay, I think that was quite an insightful presentation, and you know, when I think back on a very long career that I have had, I suppose the leaders that understood the importance of emotional intelligence, and I suppose the ones that I developed most under are the ones that, you know, I suppose they are the ones that I developed most under, those that really grasp those concepts, and I think it certainly is a sign of a good leader. We have one question so far. If there are others, please ask some questions, so that we can keep the conversation going. Niall has asked, can the emotional capital report be used in conjunction? Sorry, it's just disappeared. In conjunction with the DISC profile.
Yeah, the two things are different reports, you know. But I suppose if you wanted to, and they're giving you different information. But if you wanted to really collect lots of information to make a more informative decision, then obviously the more information you gather, the better. I believe that the emotional capital report is sufficient in its own right, but you know, certainly the DISC profile also delivers good information as well, but not necessarily and not specifically focused on leadership alone.
And another sort of question, Jessica and I were chatting in the office about this, and you know, emotional emotional intelligence is important for leaders, but in a way, everybody in an organization is leader. So it's important then that there's a broad understanding of emotional intelligence within the organization. Would that be right?
Absolutely, and you know, I touched upon it there briefly, but you know, if you think about the last 16 months or whatever we've been in since the pandemic, you know, leadership has been required from industry to communities to large communities, small communities, to families. So, you know, everybody is looking and requires leadership qualities and will have opportunities to show leadership qualities. And some people, as I said, it's in their DNA, and others it's not. And you know, people are out there who are emotionally intelligent, but don't have it described in that way because they're using many of the skills that emotionally intelligent leaders use. However, most emotional intelligent leaders are using it in an industrial fashion as opposed to in a family situation or whatever. But it is also, I hear it probably because I'm involved in that subject. I hear it more than maybe others would hear it. I don't know who here is interested in sport, but I was listening last couple of weeks ago. Manchester City were playing in the Champions League. Their second leg was against away to Borussia Dortmund, and they were 1 goal up. Excuse me. And Pep Guardiola, their manager, said one of the most important things that we're going to have to do in the game was manage their emotions. And I thought, here we are, gone out onto the football pitch, managing our emotions. But he's absolutely true, because you think about life in general and the emotions that impact upon you as a person, and what you do as a result of those emotions, where you think, hang on, did I manage those emotions the way I wanted to? Could I manage them better? Could I manage them better to get a better result for myself? They have a huge, emotions drive lots of things we do, and of course everyone has always heard, don't let your emotions get in the way of your decision making, but I suppose if we can manage our emotions well, we can make better decisions.
Emotions in sport is a topical issue this week, given what happened with some of the leading football teams, and maybe their emotions got away ahead of them. Now let's come in with a further update on the question. One of the other tools that he has used before is the wheel of emotion, which he's found quite limited. Just interested in your views and thoughts on that.
I'm not sure what's involved in that wheel of emotion. I've heard of the wheel of emotion, but not familiar with the content of it.
Maybe you could connect with each other afterwards and just have
a on LinkedIn now. We'll have a chat about it.
Yeah, be useful to follow up on that. You maybe touched on this a little bit, but I suppose to an extent we test IQ. Can you test, or is there a reliable way to fully test the EQ?
Well, you can get the emotional capital report will assess an individual's level of emotional intelligence at that given time, right? So that's the closest way of doing it. And then, obviously people will have strong areas and areas that are stronger than others, and therefore you put in place the development, or you look to develop, and you will be shown how to develop the areas that are weaker for you. But it's you don't get someone who is equally strong in everything of those 10 components that we've just talked about. So there will always be areas, but if you think about as leaders take on greater responsibility and more responsibility, their need to build their emotional intelligence is always increasing. So as I said in the presentation there, emotional intelligence can be ongoing. Building emotional intelligence can be ongoing, and it's a journey, not a destination. So the greatest leaders are always trying to improve on whatever they're currently doing. So, and they're looking at ways and means of doing so. So yes, it's the emotional capital report is the easiest way I can think of assessing one's current levels, and then that's your start point, your base point to move forward from.
And I suppose Julie is picking up on that. She's asking, do you have a link that we can use to understand our current leadership style?
Yes, if you want to get in touch with me, I can point you in the direction of that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and Julie could make a connection with you on LinkedIn. I think I'm just looking through the questions here, Gerry. That would seem to be most of the questions, and I suppose I've thrown in a few extra. Is there anything sort of extra you want to add as a sum up point at this stage?
No, I think as I said, understanding our emotions and the emotions of others, and being able to understand others' emotions and to relate with people in a way that moves us both forward, or moves us as an organization forward, as opposed to creating conflict, is vitally important. And also the emotional capital report not only is used for assessing an existing leader's current position in terms of their emotional intelligence, but can be used in the recruitment process. If an organization is looking for someone that requires leadership qualities, then the emotional capital report will tell you where they sit at this moment in time against all those emotional capital competencies. So that's could be used as well.
Yeah. Okay, I see just in the chat box, if anyone is interested in the Wheel of Emotion, Niall has just sent a link to it. If you want to download it, you can have a look at it. I'm sure others would be interested as well. Okay, Gerry, thank you for that. I think that's been a very interesting session that no doubt others will want to follow up on. We will be sending out your slides, and your slides will have the contact details on it, on them, so people can make direct contact with you. And before I finish, just a quick reminder about some up and coming chamber sessions. Next Friday we have our popular regular coffee and catch up session with members. It's just an informal opportunity to connect with other members. On the 14th of May, we have the third and final of our popular bite-sized digital marketing courses with Niall, and this one will be focusing on email marketing. Then later in May, we're working with Pari and I on a session about energy and sustainability. So just look out for more information on that. So once again, thank you to everyone for joining us on what is, and I think still is, a beautiful day out there. It's very good to come along, and I hope you've learned a lot from Gerry's session. So a big thank you to Gerry for his presentation. I hope you all have a good afternoon, and that the weather holds for a really good weekend for you. So thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks.